all you beautiful people out there. How y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, the podcast where we talk everything National Football League. And season off season, it doesn't matter because it's football. I am your host, Double Diesel, and welcome to today's episode where we are recapping some of the highlights of Week 10 of the National Football League season in the year of our Lord 2022. Before we continue with the show, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this content. It really helps boost my exposure and gets me out to more viewers in the algorithm. So if you would like to do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. Also, if you haven't already, go follow me on Twitter at DDS_pod. And also, if you haven't already, please go support me on my Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. On there, you can get exclusive content such as my weekly predictions, as well as my draft content that I do in the offseason. If you haven't already, please do. If you like to chip in, or if you just want to support the channel, that'd be great. Or you don't have to. You don't have to do really any of the things I just asked of you. Just the fact that you took the time out of your day to watch this means the absolute world to me. But with that being said, let's continue on with the show. Week 10 of the NFL season was a batshit crazy one. Quite a bit of things to talk about. We're going to start off with the one I think everyone just wants me to start talking about right off the bat. Something that I've talked about a little bit during the live stream this past Sunday night. And that is, of course, in my opinion, the hands down, very difficult to beat out game of the year. The Minnesota Vikings taking on the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. This was put in as a 1 o'clock game, though it should have been America's game of the week, had we had known what it was going to become. But during that, for most of this game, through I want to say the first 2.5 quarters of this game, it looked like everything but. This, for the first 3 quarters, was, I don't want to say a Buffalo domination, but Buffalo was having a field day for the most part. They were up, I want to say it was 27-10 at one point. They were up 3 scores. And it just felt like, once again, because the whole narrative coming into this game was, all right, Buffalo, they didn't look great last week against the Jets. This was a way, even though they're playing against a 7-1 Vikings team, this was a game to kind of allow them to right the ship. And the Minnesota Vikings also had a lot of their own questions, despite being 7-1. And like I said, the first 2.5 quarters, it looked like a Buffalo throttling. And then all of a sudden, Dalvin Cook breaks off this huge, 70-yard touchdown run to put the game within 2 scores. But then we get to the fourth quarter, and, things are kind of stalling out, still a 10-point game. And then the Bills are driving. They get into a goal-to-go situation, middle of the fourth quarter. And they go for it on 3rd down. Pass falls incomplete. They go for it on 4th down. And this was a head-scratching move in the moment even, because I thought, I appreciate the ballsiness, but you got to just take the points, I feel like, because it is still only a 2-score game. Now, your defense has been able to keep the offense in check for the most part, and Justin Jefferson, despite having a dominant first half, was rendered kind of silent for most of the second half, throughout the third quarter and most of the fourth. So you kind of have faith in your defense, but still, it's why not take the points there. But I'm not an NFL coach. That's the reason why I'm here. I'm not the one calling the plays. I'm not the one designing the game plan. And Sean McDermott looked at it at a 4th and 2 situation near the goal line and thought, why not? Let's pull the trigger. Let's go for it. And Josh Allen, who I will talk about him a little more extensively later on after this. But he rolls to his right. He's looking. He throws it. straight into the arms of one Patrick Peterson, old man Pat Pete. Picked it off, got a significant return afterwards, brought him out to like the 30-yard line. And I don't want to say you kind of felt the momentum kind of shifting a little bit. And eventually time goes on. They do eventually get into the end zone, but they miss the extra point. So there was instead of it being a one-score game, well, it was still a one-score game regardless. But instead of it being a 3-point game and a field goal to tie it, now they needed a touchdown, period, in order to take the lead. So it gets into that situation. They score. They force a 3-and-out. Now Minnesota gets the ball back, down 4 with a touchdown to take the lead and potentially win the game. But all of a sudden, they're starting going backwards. Minnesota is. They get the ball, they go backwards. All of a sudden, they're at the 2-minute warning with a 4th and 18 that they're facing. And you're thinking, shit, all right, there went that drama. And then something that I'm watching this game on Red Zone. I don't have Game Pass. I'm watching everything on NFL Red Zone, and this was the primary game they were showing at this point. So I was sort of watching this on my bed back here, just sort of laying down, watching the games as they were going on. Same with this one. And I'm just sort of laying down, watching it. And on this 4th and 18, Kirk Cousins just chucks it up to Justin Jefferson, who, like I said, was silent for most of the second half. He had a dominant first half, but was silent for most of it. Most of the second half, that is. Just chucks it up to him. And at first, it looked like it was intercepted. Then I thought, okay, it was knocked down. And then I saw the Vikings sideline going ballistic. And that's when I went from laying down on my bed to sitting straight up and screaming, did he just fucking catch that? When you think of the greatest catches you have ever seen, first for many of you would probably be the Odell catch. And I, unfortunately, did not get to witness that one live because I was, 14 years old. I was tired. I already went to bed at that point. But I watched it the following morning and just being in awe that someone could be that athletic to pull a catch like that off. And it was still, for me, the greatest catch I had ever seen. That was later overtaken in my eyes by Julian Edelman in the Super Bowl, which was just a miracle circus catch. But when you're just talking about pure, athletic, unbelievable catches, Odell is the king. Up until last Sunday. This is the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life. How in the world Justin Jefferson did not let this ball hit the ground? How it wasn't picked off, first of all, because there is one Justin Jefferson hand on it and 2 Bills defender hands on it, and how Justin Jefferson was the one to, first of all, how it didn't get picked off is beyond me, and second, how Justin Jefferson was able to rip it out of his hands with just one hand is unbelievable, and how he was able to corral it while falling down at a weird angle and kind of like pinning it to his thigh slightly, but he didn't even pin it to his thigh. It was near his thigh. It was almost like he had his thigh help it, and then he just brought it into his chest. It was the most unbelievable feat of athleticism I have ever seen in my life. Unbelievable feat of concentration I have ever seen in my entire life. It is the greatest catch, and in my opinion, it is better than Odell's catch. Because one, yes, Odell was interfered with slightly on that play. He was ripped back slightly, which caused him to go all the way back and reach back for it. But here he had a Bills defender all over him, a Bills defender's hands all over the football on a 4th and 18 with the game on the line. He doesn't make that catch, the game is over. And it's just circumstance, the athleticism that required in the play, the concentration that it required in that play. It has cemented myself in my eyes as the greatest catch I personally have ever seen. It was unbelievable. It was the definition of unbelievable. And that helped keep this game alive. And that allowed the Vikings to drive all the way down the field to get into a goal line situation. Now, the Bills' defense, they stood. They stood their ground. Stop them on 1st and goal. Stop them on 2nd and goal. Then they get to 3rd and goal. Stop them there. 4th and goal comes up. Well, actually, they had 2 4th and goal situations. One was a drop pass by Dalvin Cook that got bailed out because what was it, Phillips, the defensive tackle, jumped off sides horrendously, I might add. But then they go for a QB sneak on the 2nd 4th and goal attempt. And they stuff them. It looked close for a second, but they stuff them with 44 seconds left in the game. And they confirm it that Kirk Cousins did not get in. He did not break the plane. And you're thinking, oh, man, so close. The heroics of Justin Jefferson, and it all went for naught. And that's exactly what you thought. You thinking, the game's over. The game is completely over. And you think that because you're not, even though the Bills are backed up on their own goal line, Josh Allen, he's like, what, 6'5", like 240 something. Like, he can easily just push through to gain like a yard or two to give him breathing room so they could take a knee and waste the rest of the clock. So yeah, you're thinking game's over because you're not anticipating Pro Bowl center Mitch Morse and Pro Bowl quarterback Josh Allen to botch the easiest thing to do in football, which is the center to quarterback snap exchange. You're not anticipating the easiest thing in football, the most simple thing in football, the one thing that every quarterback goes with his center before the game and practices time after time after time, before every single practice, before every single game. They practice this all the time. You're not expecting that simple thing to be misexecuted. And you're also, if that does happen, you're not expecting linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings, Eric Kendricks, who is going forward to try and keep him in the end zone to potentially get a safety, to just fall forward and be perfectly in the right place at the right time for where the ball is so he can recover it in the end zone. You're not anticipating all these things when a situation like that is happening. And yet it did. The absolute worst possible scenario that could have happened for the Buffalo Bills in that situation happened. And watching this live, I was floored. I couldn't imagine I was watching this in my room, floored when I saw that. I can't imagine what it must have been like in that building. To just go from this is a situation of literally snatching defeat from the jaws of victory for the Buffalo Bills, because here was your defense that made this incredible goal line stand, and the very next play after that is a botched snap recovered for a touchdown. Are you kidding me? It was the worst it was the worst outcome that could have possibly happened there. And I'll tie this into a point I'll make after I'm done talking about the events of this game, because it's still not done yet, believe it or not. So now all of a sudden an extra point gets kicked, and now all of a sudden the Vikings are up 3, just like that. And now it's the Bills that have to drive down the field and kick a field goal in order to send the game to overtime. Where have we heard this story before? So the Bills, they're able to get down, also with some assistance from the referees. They on a Gabe Davis catch that was clearly a drop. For some reason, I don't know why New York didn't call in to have them review this play because it should not have been completed. We probably don't even get to overtime if they actually checked in with the refs and be like, hey, look at this. He dropped it. But it didn't happen. They go down the field. They kick the field goal. Game goes to overtime. Minnesota gets the ball first. And again, with the hands, the help of Justin Jefferson, who dominated this first half, disappeared for most of the second, and then the 2-minute warning in overtime, he just completely took over. I've never seen a wide receiver, at least in a long-ass time, take over a game late the way Justin Jefferson took over this game late. It was absolutely, what he had, 10 catches for a $195 and a touchdown, including not one, not two, but 3 crucial catches late. The one-handed catch I talked about, another catch where he got hit by the safety that put him down in the goal line on that drive. And then on the drive in overtime, where it was 3rd and 10, and Kirk Cousins just threw a laser on the sideline inside the 5, and Justin Jefferson caught it inbounds inside the 5-yard line to set up a goal-to-go situation. Now, they didn't get into the end zone on that. They had to settle for a field goal. But that, again, just showed that Justin Jefferson, I sort of jokingly put out a tweet after that game where I was like, I don't know if Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in football. I'm going to really have to think about it. But in all seriousness, yeah, I think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football. And this game all but solidified it. He's incredible. We have not seen a receiver take over a game like this since, I want to even say Randy Moss, which ironically was also a former Minnesota Viking. But yeah, man, it was just he's the definition of insanity. He's the definition of this should not be possible, but he is. But like I said, didn't result in them getting into the end zone. They kick a field goal, take the lead 33-30. And now Josh Allen, who all offseason we were talking about if he just had the chance to get the football in overtime in that playoff game against Kansas City, that game could have been different. Well, here we go. You have your chance now, Josh. Let's see what you do with it. They drive down the field off of 2 huge Josh Allen runs, and they get down. They're sniffing the red zone. And Allen drops back, throws to the corner of the end zone for Dawson Knox. Pass gets knocked away incomplete. It was this close to getting fit in there for a game-winning touchdown. But defender played it well, fell incomplete. The very next play, Josh Allen looks. He is eyeing Gabe Davis the entire way. He is looking at Gabe Davis the entire way. And Patrick Peterson saw that he was looking at Gabe Davis the entire time. And Allen tries to fit it in. And Pat Pete didn't even have to undercut the route because Allen threw it once again straight to him. Pat Pete picks it off, runs it out, slides. Game over. Vikings win. Game of as I hit my microphone and my glasses. Game of the year without a shadow of a doubt. Watching this live was an unbelievable experience. And it was everything you like. If you love NFL football, if you love the sport of football, period, what more could you seemingly ask for? I can even say forget game of the year. This was one of the greatest games I've ever seen, period. Regular season or postseason. One of the greatest games, period, because of who was in it, the narratives coming into this game and after this game. I'm going to talk about the Vikings first as far as the narratives, because they were coming into this week despite being 7-1. I even said in my weekly grades last week that they were 7-1, but they were probably the least feared 7-1 team you can possibly imagine, because their one loss came to the Philadelphia Eagles, who we'll talk about later today. Their one loss came to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they got throttled by them. And every single other one of their losses are one-score wins, and they just squeak them out. And a lot of them are games where they have to make a huge comeback. Same with this game. But when you looked at this game against who they were playing, against a Bills team that coming into this game, I and many others viewed as the best team in football, and to come back down 17 late in the second half and pull out this win in overtime, this was a huge statement win for the Minnesota Vikings, and they are established. They are a legit team. They are a legit force, not just in the NFC, but in the NFL, period. This is a real team that is a force to be reckoned with. So they squashed that narrative after this game. Yes, the Minnesota Vikings are legit. And then for the Buffalo Bills, I don't want to say I'm concerned, but man, can so much change in a day. They went from, in one day, being the kings of the AFC East. Nobody in their stratosphere as far as winning their division. That is the Bills' division to win, and nobody else. They went from that to all of a sudden one game, they're now currently in third place in the AFC East, behind a Dolphins team that they already lost to, and a Jets team they already lost to, and a Patriots team who's all of a sudden one game behind them, and they have yet to play them. Now, granted, I don't think Buffalo loses to New England in either one of their matches, but still, it is something you have to take notice in. But they went from undisputed first place in not just their division, but in the AFC, to they might not even get a home playoff game because of what's already happened at this point. And that's the crazy thing. That is a real possibility we're looking at, where all of a sudden this team that we've been saying all year is the best team in football, they might not even get a home playoff game this year. And that is unbelievable. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that these past 3 weeks, let's just face it, Josh Allen has not been playing that great. He didn't play that great against Green Bay, despite the fact that they won. He didn't play well really at all against the Jets last week. And then this game late, he had, 2 red zone interceptions? In fact, I think he's had 4 red zone interceptions over the past 2 weeks. He's playing hero ball when he has... It doesn't make sense. He's trying to play hero ball despite the fact that he has Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. There's no reason to play hero ball. And also a lot of this has to do with their run. And I saw the stat line after the game that Josh Allen once again was this team's leading rusher, and that is also a big flaw with this team that I even said was a flaw with this team last year. This team does not have a running game. They have good running backs, but they abandon the run game way too fast. Early on in this very game, they were running the ball with Devin Singletary. He actually got 2 touchdowns early on in this game, which actually were his first 2 rushing touchdowns of the year. I couldn't believe that. But they were getting the running game going, and then all of a sudden, randomly in the middle of the game, they just abandon it completely. And it doesn't make this team, it basically is, it's kind of designed in a way where it's like they live by Josh Allen and they die by Josh Allen. And they don't have a running game of any sort. Like I said, they have good running backs. They have Devin Singletary. They just traded for Nyheim Hines, who I don't even think has seen the field yet in the 2 games since they've traded for him. It doesn't make sense to me. It does not make a lick of sense to me why this team doesn't at least attempt to run the football. Because when you're not even attempting to run the football and teams know you're just going to pass every single time and that Josh Allen is your only threat of running the ball, well, they can just put a QB spy and then just drop 5 or 6 back every single play. And not load the box at all because they know you're not even going to think about running the football. So, am I overly concerned about the Bills? No. I still think they're going to miss. I can't imagine a world where this team actually misses the playoffs. But all of a sudden, the climb to being the AFC favorite to make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, that all of a sudden looks like a steeper slope because of those aforementioned losses. They're 0-2 in division play right now. That's wild to me. And you're in a division now where all 4 teams in that division, if the season ended today, all 4 teams from the AFC East would be in the playoffs. And they're the only division where every single team has a winning record. You have the Dolphins, who are 7-3. You have the Jets, who are coming off a bye week, who are 6-3. The Bills just lost, they're 6-3, and you also have the Patriots, who are coming off a bye week, who are 5-4. All 4 teams in that division have a winning record, and Buffalo lost to 2 of those teams already. So this is going to be a steep road ahead of them if they want to actually, because they're going to most likely have to go on the road in January unless some crazy happens. But they're no longer in control of their own destiny because of the losses they've suffered and who they've lost to. So, yeah, man, it's just this. There were so many things during this game and after this game that were worth talking about. And yeah, man, it was an unbelievable game, and I'm excited to see what both these teams look like going forward. Speaking of the AFC East, I talked about how the Bills are in trouble as far as getting a home playoff game because of the teams they lost to. One of those teams being the Miami Dolphins, who are now first place in the AFC East. They are 7-3 at the moment. They just obliterated the Cleveland Browns. And I just want to talk about this a little briefly because I just think it's so fascinating. Before the season, everyone was questioning whether or not the decision to fire Brian Flores was a good idea. I, myself, as long as many other people, were saying that the Dolphins were moronic for firing Brian Flores out of the blue when he was responsible for giving this team their first winning seasons since, 2008? So it doesn't make sense why they made the decision to fire their best head coach they've had in a long, long time. But they did, and they had a backup plan in Mike McDaniel. And let me tell you, man, through 10 weeks, he has been everything they could have hoped for in a head coach. And he has brought everything to this offense and everything to this team that they hoped he would bring. And I think it's time to say it. After 10 games, I think it's time to say it. The Miami Dolphins have the best offense in the NFL. I just think that's a fact at this point. Like, Tyreek Hill I don't think he's the best receiver in football. I just talked earlier that I think that distinction goes to Justin Jefferson. But this team is unreal offensively. Tyreek Hill, he's still on pace to be the first 2,000-yard receiver in NFL history. Jalen Waddle having Jalen Waddle as your number 2 is a borderline cheat code because he would be the number 1 receiver on half the teams in the NFL, and he's their number 2 receiver. Their running game has been astounding. They brought Jeff Wilson over in a trade from San Francisco. He's made an impact since coming here. Raheem Mostert has made impacts when he's gotten carries. And the man of the hour, the man that everyone, including myself, was kind of shitting on these past couple of years and in the offseason, Tua Tagovailoa. a man who I had zero faith in coming into this year, and I was saying if Tua does not succeed with this talent, he's not the guy. If he comes in and he just does not look good and he looks like the Tua he's looked the past 2 years, he is not the guy. Let's just say he looks like the guy. Let's just say that. He has been... Words can't describe how incredible he has been this year. He looks like a changed man. He's running an offense that best suits his skill set. He looks comfortable in it. The Dolphins have won every single game that he started and finished. They're undefeated in games that Tua has started and finished. And he's getting... Now, obviously, you have to credit these receivers for making this offense as explosive as it is. But you have to give Tua his roses. He's been everything you'd hope he'd be and then some. I don't even think the biggest Tua truthers thought he was going to look this great this late into the season. And he's been astounding. And it's not out of the realm of possibility to say that he is a legitimate MVP candidate just based on the way he's playing. If he continues to play like this for the rest of the year and the Dolphins just go on a complete extra tear and they just win out, even if they don't win out, if they're playing every single game and Tua just looks phenomenal, I can't imagine a world why you wouldn't consider him a legitimate MVP candidate. He has been the definition of incredible, and I feel like I just start sounding like a broken record the more I talk about him. But yeah, I feel like I have to, because there was so much stacked against him as far as narratives and people not believing in him. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, I believed in him. I did not believe in him. I thought Tua was terrible. I thought Tua was his first 2 years in the league, I thought he was terrible. But he's made me and everyone else in America eat a gigantic pile of fucking cow shit. And yeah, man, I think he's solidified himself as maybe this team's franchise quarterback going forward, especially as long as Tua and Jalen Waddle are there. But yeah, man, that top 5 pick that they spent on him finally paying off. And if you're a Dolphins fan, thank God for that, because now your team all of a sudden looks like a legitimate force to potentially make a Super Bowl run. So that's really exciting to see. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, and just seeing this team in the division that it's in, with Buffalo, with the Jets, with New England, that you can look at this team that has, again, the Bills in it and confidently say that they're the best offense in football is an accomplishment in and of itself. So I just want to I'm a Patriots fan. I hate the Dolphins with a burning passion, but I'm also going to sit here and give them their credit. They've been absolutely astounding this year. Now I want to talk about another game that had a lot of crazy fucking shit coming into it. Indianapolis and Las Vegas. I first want to talk about the Colts side of things. What a weird 8-day stretch for the Indianapolis Colts. What a weird ass stretch. Because you started out with coming off a humiliating defeat in New England where Sam Ehlinger got fucking mauled. And that apparently was enough for Jim Irsay to look at Frank Reich and say, you're done. There's the door. And all of a sudden the Colts didn't have a head coach. They fired Frank Reich, which I will admit was kind of surprising. But they fired him, and Jim Irsay came in out of nowhere, and later that day, I talked about this in my podcast last week, comes in and hires Jeff Saturday, who had never coached an NFL game before, not as a head coach, not as a coordinator, position coach, nothing. In fact, the only coaching experience he's had was being a head coach of his local high school football team. That's it. That is it. Other than that, he was an ESPN analyst who was literally just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, he was an ESPN analyst. And then all of a sudden, within a week, he was the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts just out of nowhere. And then like a couple days later, Saturday announces that his offensive coordinator, his play caller at least, is going to be a guy named Parks Frazier, to which I and everyone else like, who? Turns out he is a 30-year-old who was on this coaching staff under Frank Reich, who Frank Reich apparently spoke the world of, but had never called plays in an NFL game before, never called plays in his life on any level. So everyone is just like, okay, it's a full tank job. This has to be he's probably just a yes man for Irsay. And I've been saying, like, Irsay is just like, we're just going straight into the tank. We're just going to stop playing this fucking QB roulette, and we're just going to try and get as many losses as possible so we can go up, and we can try and get somebody like a Bryce Young potentially, like a CJ Stroud, like a Will Levis, like even a Hendon Hooker, somebody in the draft next year so we don't have to keep playing this game every single year. And all of a sudden they announce that Matt Ryan is going to be the starting quarterback going forward, who was just benched 2 weeks ago for Sam Ehlinger out of nowhere, but benched nonetheless. And now they're going in and playing the Raiders in Las Vegas, who have all their other problems that I will get into in a little bit. And they walk into Las Vegas, and you're watching the game unfold, and the Colts are still not a particularly good team at the moment. But I will say having Jonathan Taylor back helps a lot. All of a sudden, the play calling looked good. The team looked well prepared. They looked like they had like some pep in their step that they didn't have for the past couple of weeks. They looked energized. They looked like they were hungry. They are like, every time they score, they make a big play. Like, everyone's on the sideline, like, getting pumped up, and they're high-fiving Jeff Saturday, and Jeff Saturday is like hugging other coaches. And they win. They walk into the Las Vegas, and they beat the Las Vegas Raiders. And Jeff Saturday, just like that, after getting clowned on for taking the head coaching job, despite never having any coaching experience at all past the high school level, is all of a sudden 1-0 as an NFL head coach. What? Talk about a fucking roller coaster of emotions. Oh my gosh. This is unbelievable. And everyone says, like, he's not qualified. Everyone is saying, leading up to this game, he's not qualified to be a head coach because he doesn't have any credentials. And I remember somebody, I think it was Kirk Morrison, who was filling in for Rich Eisen on the Rich Eisen show. He was talking about how a lot of times guys don't really care that much about credentials. I mean, it definitely helps. But if you're not a good motivator, then they're not going to take you all that seriously. And Saturday, and you saw in his the post-game locker room celebration after the game, I was getting fired up after that. Like, this is a guy who, I mean, he's a former player, obviously, one of the greats in Colts history. And he, all of a sudden, it was like, he just came in with this new energy and this whole like strategy of motivating these guys on a team that it looked like the season was over. They were throwing in the towel in. And he came in and had these guys motivated and ready to play in a way that they weren't just a couple weeks ago under Frank Reich. And it's incredible to see. And obviously, he's a smart football mind. I mean, you don't play center in the NFL for as long as he did, as high of a level as he did, and not be a smart football player and not be smart when it comes to X's and O's. But when it comes to motivation, some head coaches have it, some guys don't. And you got to be able to do that. And he's came in and in just 5 days and was able to get these guys motivated enough to come out and play a really good football game and win. It's impressive, man. Now, I'm not going to go in here and say that the Colts are going to make this amazing run and make the playoffs. I'm not saying that at all. The AFC is way too loaded for that. But it's really impressive. And who knows, depending on how the season goes, maybe they might consider keeping Jeff Saturday as the head coach going into next year. We don't know. We have zero clue. But we'll just have to see what it's like going forward. But I wanted to talk about that because it's a nice feel-good story. Because the other side of this is the complete opposite of a feel-good story. I've been saying it all here. I feel like what the fuck is going on with the Raiders can be put on a t-shirt at this point. But this team is broken. This Raiders team, they're 2-7 at the moment. This team's broken. And I don't think I've seen an uglier 3-game stretch out of a team in my entire life. And I've been a football fan for about 10 years at this point. I've seen a lot of bad football teams. I've seen a lot of ugly football get played. I have not seen a worse and more ugly 3-game stretch in my life than the Raiders put on these past 3 weeks. They get shut out by the New Orleans Saints. A Saints team that's not very good at all. And I used to say they were stuck in purgatory. Now they're at the point where they're just bad. So they get shut out by the Saints in New Orleans. They're up 3 scores to the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. And then Jacksonville makes a huge comeback and takes over and wins that game. That was a game that I was shocked. I was saying, I couldn't believe McDaniels wasn't fired on the tarmac. I thought for sure Mark Davis was going to Lane Kiffin him on the tarmac, for sure. But he didn't. And then you had this game where you walk in and you lose to a head coach who, I was just singing their praises, but still, you lost to a head coach who had 0 coaching experience past high school level. Offensive coordinator who had never called plays before on any level, period. And a 38-year-old quarterback who was benched 2 weeks prior, brought back into the starting lineup, and then just randomly in the middle of the game, because your defense is so piss poor, randomly just turns into Mike Vick and runs untouched for 39 yards. I just gave you all that context, and despite me giving you all that context of what this Raiders team has just gone through these past 3 weeks, we're sitting here on Wednesday, November 16th, and Josh McDaniels still has a job. I don't know what that buyout amount is, because I heard that's the only reason, apparently, that Josh McDaniels still has a job is because Mark Davis, who is known widely as the poorest owner in the NFL, he doesn't have the money to pay that buyout. But still, man, I feel like it almost doesn't even matter, because I don't know if you've watched the post-game press conference that Derek Carr had. But Derek Carr, this is a guy who, when everything went to shit last year with the Raiders, when John Gruden had all those emails leaked, and Henry Ruggs killed a woman drunk driving. And then Damon Arnett with his fiasco of going on IG Live and threatening to kill someone while waving a gun around. All the things that this team went through last year. Derek Carr was the one. Rich Bisaccia and Derek Carr, they were the two guys that were the emotional rocks of this team. They were the ones that kept the team molded together despite all that shit going on. And they were the ones that kept it together and were like, hey, we are a family. We are one. We are a unit. Let's overcome this. And they did. They went on a winning streak. They made the playoffs. They went one and done, but they went 10-7 and made the playoffs despite everything they went through last year. So Derek Carr was the emotional backbone of this team through all that stuff I just talked about. And yet here we are 10 weeks into the season. They're 2-7. And Derek Carr is on the press conference after this loss to the Colts in tears. He is in tears talking about how it pisses him off to see all the preparation and hard work, all the things that these guys have to do every single day of every single week just to get to sleep at night, and have it result in this. He said it pissed him off. And he was in tears as he was saying that he was getting choked up throughout this press conference. And I'm watching this and I was like, oh my gosh, Josh McDaniels just broke Derek Carr. The same Derek Carr that was the emotional backbone of this team that went all through everything and went through last year. And he's now broken, emotionally broken. At some point, I do not care what that buyout amount is. Mark Davis needs to get rid of Josh McDaniels at this point because it is breaking his team. I've said, and many others have said, they should not have let Rich Bisaccia walk. They should have kept him as the head coach because he did a phenomenal job towards the end of last year. I said that he should have been the head coach coming into this year. Mark Davis thought otherwise. He thought, hey, let's bring in Josh McDaniels, despite the fact that his head coaching resume is abysmal. And a Raiders team that made the playoffs last year that on paper improved by getting Chandler Jones, by getting Devontae Adams. Like, this team was set. They were locked and loaded for a championship run. Let's go. And yet, here we are, 2-7, one of the worst football teams in the NFL right now. And despite everything that I just said, Mark Davis on Monday was giving McDaniels a vote of confidence, saying, oh, I like Josh. I think Josh has done a fantastic job. This was his words. He was saying, I think Josh has done a fantastic job. Rome wasn't built in a day. I think he's been doing a great job. And I read this, and I'm like, are we watching the same Raiders team? I think he's accidentally watching footage of last year's Raiders. Because there's no way he's looking at this Raiders team and how they're playing and how underprepared they are and what they're doing every single week and how they've broken Derek Carr emotionally. There's no way that he's looking at this current team and still saying Josh McDaniels has done a fantastic job. There's no way. There's no way in hell. I don't know what you do at this point if you're the Raiders. If McDaniels didn't get fired after that game, he's not getting fired this year. Maybe at the end of the year, and that's a big maybe. But I don't know why. I can't give you answers as to why McDaniels is still the head coach of this football team. Legitimate, concrete answers. I can't tell you why. But that's all I wanted to say on that. Another thing I want to talk about was a game that, once again, I had complete confidence in an outcome of that completely blew up in my face and went the opposite of what I was confident would happen. That game was the Dallas Cowboys against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. I looked at this game and I looked, Packers were on a 5-game losing streak, and the Cowboys were playing the way the Cowboys have been playing, especially on defense. And I thought that Cowboys defense was going to look at that Packers offense and they were going to be licking their chops. I was wrong. I was wrong because, ladies and gentlemen, in Green Bay, Wisconsin, I think you finally found a receiver. And Christian Watson, their second-round pick who they traded up for, who has been knocked on all year for having terrible drop issues and hamstring issues. This was his coming out game. And wouldn't you know it, once Aaron Rodgers finally has a receiver who can get open and catch the football, he all of a sudden goes back to looking like an MVP caliber quarterback. Who would have thought? But yeah, Christian Watson, he had the trifecta. He had 3 touchdowns in this game. All of them were huge touchdowns. And yeah, man, I want to talk about this game. I wanted to talk about this game briefly just to talk about the Green Bay Packers and how I don't want to say they found their rhythm again because it was only one game. And we don't know if this was a fluke yet or not. But if this isn't a fluke and Christian Watson might have finally found his footing, then all of a sudden you're looking at a situation where the Packers team, who were just coming off a 5-game losing streak, looking dead in the water, a team that I gave an F grade to last week in my midseason report cards, all of a sudden they're in a situation where in a weak NFC, they can make a legitimate playoff run. They can. They can make a legitimate run to the playoffs. Now, how far they get into the playoffs is a completely different story. But I think, can they make the playoffs? Can they sneak into the playoffs? Absolutely. I can't imagine why they wouldn't. Especially if this wasn't just a Christian Watson 1-game fluke and he actually can be that good for the remainder of the year. But yeah, man, it's going to be interesting for the Packers moving forward. I am excited to see if Christian Watson does get better. But yeah, man, if Aaron Rodgers has always been notorious for not wanting to develop chemistry with younger receivers, and this year he's kind of not had a choice to. He's kind of been forced to, and it has not been pretty. But it looks like it's finally starting to happen a little bit with Christian Watson, and he's finally starting to get his confidence. Aaron Rodgers finally starting to get confidence in Christian Watson. And if that's the case, like I said, look out, because we've seen in Packers teams past, all Aaron Rodgers really needs is one receiver in order for this team to make a run to the playoffs. So, yeah, man, I kind of want to talk about that. Also, the Cowboys, just one small thing about the Cowboys. This was a game that the Cowboys, frankly, I feel like should have won. They were up, 14 at one point, and they had a chance to win this game in overtime, and they made a weird decision to go for it despite being in field goal range. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about that, but it doesn't make sense. I think the Cowboys will be fine, though, now. But they did show that Mike McCarthy is capable of making weird, stupid decisions like that still. But, yeah, man. It's weird, but I think it's something that the Cowboys will eventually get over, though. I think the Cowboys will be just fine, unless they implode, which would just be kind of hilarious to me because it'd be the Cowboys imploding again. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they'll be just fine. But as far as the Packers go, this was a win that they desperately needed in order to not necessarily save their season, but give their season just a little bit more hope. Not just for the remainder of this year, but also moving forward in the case of Christian Watson. One last thing I want to talk about is Monday Night Football. Commanders and Eagles. This is a game that I didn't really have a lot of expectations for because I just assumed the Eagles were going to be improving to 9-0 and they were just going to steamroll the Commanders. But then I forgot the valuable rule. I forgot the valuable rule of 2022 NFL football. Do not rule out the possibility of chaos happening. And chaos has taken a human form, and his name is Taylor Heinicke. Now, Taylor Heinicke, I saw a tweet that said Heinicke is the NFL's Jekyll and Hyde, and that is the perfect way to describe him. He is the definition of when he's on, he's legitimately a top 15, if not top 10 quarterback when he's good. But when he's bad, he's, why the fuck are you starting? It is, and there's never a happy median with Taylor Heinicke either. He's either really freaking good or really freaking bad, and there's no in between whatsoever. And in the first half, we got really freaking good Taylor Heinicke, where he was slinging it. He was throwing some dimes at Terry McLaurin, who, by the way, thank God he got paid in the offseason because he deserves it. He deserves to be in the conversation of top 10 wide receivers. He's incredible. Also, I'll talk about this for the second half. But yeah, Taylor Heinicke in the first half was lighting it up, and then the second half he kind of teetered off in his play a little bit. But they were able to rebound with the 1-2 punch of Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, who Brian Robinson was, what is it they call on Good Morning Football? Angry runner. Brian Robinson is the definition of an angry runner, where he gets the football and he gets all these guys on his back and he just refuses to go down. And as a football fan, it's really, really fun to watch a running back just do that. So you have him, you have Antonio Gibson. They're like a nice 1-2 punch. And they were able to put on an excellent first half that really cemented the tone for the remainder of the game. Now, the Eagles tried to make a comeback late in the second half, but they ultimately fell short. And ladies and gentlemen, after 10 weeks, it is time for the 72 Dolphins to pop the champagne one more year, as there are no longer any undefeated teams left in the NFL this year, as the Philadelphia Eagles have fallen to the Washington Commies. And yeah, man, what a weird... That was like the perfect encapsulation. That was like the perfect way to cap off what was a wild and random week in the NFL. But I just wanted to touch on that just briefly, because I feel like if I didn't touch on the Eagles no longer being undefeated, I wouldn't be doing my job justice. But I will say for the Eagles, same with the Bills, I'm not overly concerned. I still think they are arguably one of the most complete teams in the NFL. Not every game is going to be perfect. Not every game is going to be that good, even for the best teams in the NFL. But yeah, I still think they're going to be fine. They're still 8-1. They're still on top of the NFC, I believe, right now at the moment. And actually, yeah, they are, because they beat the Vikings. I was questioning if the Vikings were on the first seed in the NFC right now, if it was still I think it's still the Eagles. But yeah, man, I think they're going to be just fine. One loss isn't going to kill them, and I think in a way it's having at least one loss is just sort of like, all right, now the pressure of going undefeated is off the table. Now we could just focus on just playing our game and playing football, and let's just go on a tear. But yeah, I think the Eagles are going to be just fine. The Commanders caught them on a night where they were vulnerable, and the Commanders took advantage of it. And yeah, man, I think that's really all it is. I think the Eagles are going to be just fine. I still think they're the best team in the NFC right now, though very closely rivaled by the Minnesota Vikings. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say on that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to bring us to an end of the show. If, like I said, you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoy this kind of content. Also, again, if you have not already, please go follow me on Twitter at DDS_pod and go support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. A link to those will be down in the description below. And with that being said, I will be back tomorrow on Patreon for my Week 11 NFL predictions. I'll be back here on YouTube for my live stream of the Chiefs and the Chargers. And I will be back here next Wednesday, a week from today, to do a podcast recapping Week 11, and the cycle continues. So, with that being said, I'm Double Diesel. Peace.